And welcome to the Gentleman Scholars Club. If you're familiar with our channel, you know that I like to wear turtleneck sweaters, or if you're British, roll neck jumpers. Take a look at any of my what am I wearing today and why videos, and you'll see a turtleneck featured prominently in any of the winter editions. Since I live in a cold climate where the winters are long, the temperature is always around freezing in the winter, turtleneck has become a staple of my cold season wardrobe and part of my winter uniform. And I always wear it with either a suit jacket or with a sport coat. In today's video, we'll be talking about how to wear turtlenecks with tailoring and give you some style tips and ideas and considerations around that. For me, the first consideration when choosing something to wear with a turtleneck is to choose the correct type of tailoring. So the definition of tailoring, generally full suits, matching jacket and trousers, or sport coats with non-matching trousers. I would also venture that a safari jacket and a field jacket, something like that, would also qualify as tailoring, and I'll show you an example of that as we go along. But the main consideration is not to wear this sort of worsted wool tailoring you would normally choose for the office or for a business setting. That type of suit, even a sport coat, tends to be more formal. I think it's also thinner and finer, so think of the super 110s, 120s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, really fine gauge wool, which is antithetical to the style and feel of a turtleneck. Turtleneck is by definition, even in its thinnest forms, a heavier garment. It's a wintry thing, it's a piece of knitwear, and it can be chunky. Right? The roll neck itself gives it that sort of weightiness. So you really want to choose a suit or sport coat that is consonant or consistent with that appearance. So I would recommend, first of all, choosing something in a flannel, or with texture, or with greater weight. Now, this is a chocolate flannel, for example, and it has that sort of woolly hand, you have that feel of winter to it, and it definitely goes well with a turtleneck, which is also obviously a winter garment. Secondly, we probably prefer soft tailoring and tailoring that is loose-fitting, unstructured tailoring, so something that doesn't have formal padding in the shoulders, that fits more fully in the chest, has a little bit more drape. The reason being, A, you want to make sure you can fit the turtleneck under there without being too tight. And secondly, or B, that you want to have that sweater-like fit that goes along with a sweater that you're wearing. I remember when I first showed my tailor soft tailoring or unstructured tailoring, he told me it didn't fit. And he said, well, it does fit only if you want to wear it like a sweater. And that is exactly the way I want to wear it, especially if I'm wearing a sweater. I want to wear a sweater-like piece of tailoring so that the two jibe and work nicely together. The second piece of advice I have is that the turtleneck you choose doesn't have to be super expensive. Sure, you might see a 100% cashmere chunky roll neck that you really can't live without for a few $100s, but you can also get by with something from Uniqlo or Zara or any of those department store brands. The thing is that if it looks good, it'll pair well with your tailoring. The tailoring covers a lot of it, and you can get away with something that's $35 as opposed to $500. This particular turtleneck was purchased maybe 8 to 10 years ago from a Canadian brand, which I don't even think exists anymore. It may not even be 100% natural in terms of the material, but it fits well, it feels nice, and it also has a great color that I've been hard-pressed to find, again, that pairs nicely with the lighter beige in this houndstooth jacket. So don't worry about the cost. Something with $35 from Uniqlo might look just as good as something that's $500. Third piece of advice I have is that the length of the turtleneck also matters. You don't want to have something that ends at your hips or at your thighs. You want to have something that ends above where your jacket ends, and usually that means around the waistline. Now for me, I'm roughly 5'11". I usually wear size medium, 48 or 38, depending on if you're going by EU or US sizing in jackets, and so I would probably end my turtlenecks around 25 inches, maybe 26 at the most. You can also shrink your turtleneck, and I've got a video on this where you use hot water to shrink the turtleneck down, but it's not 100% guaranteed. You can also go to the tailor, and certain tailors, and they can cut the hem or cinch the hem up higher to shorten your sweaters. But again, it's a tricky proposition, so it's always best to start off with one that ends in the right place. Fourth consideration is, should you wear your turtleneck tucked or untucked? There's really no right answer, but if you're wearing a full suit with it, even one that's more casual as I recommended, you may want to tuck it in because that gives you a little bit more formality, and again, it gives you that clean front. If you untuck it, it's more casual because it looks like the turtleneck is sort of draping over your trousers. But either way works. General rule is with a suit, tuck it in. With a sport coat and odd trousers, leave it out. But it depends on the situation, whether you want to convey casualness or if you want to convey that formality. Part of that choice is also informed by the type of turtleneck that you've chosen. If you've chosen a lighter weight, thin merino wool turtleneck, you can probably fit that into your waistband fairly easily. If you're wearing a chunky turtleneck, it may be more difficult to do that unless you want to create a muffin top for yourself at your waistline. But I have seen it done in this photo from the Armory. You can see it done successfully, and I don't know if there's a muffin top there, but the jacket disguises that well if there is. Next, realize that the sleeves of the turtleneck may not always show below your cuffs. So if you're wearing a shirt, usually you want to show a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch of cuff below your sleeve. But with a turtleneck, because of the springiness of the material, the way it's knitted, and because it's bulkier under your sleeves, the turtleneck sleeve tends to pull up, and so most of the time you won't actually show any cuff below the jacket. I've tried a number of turtlenecks and sweaters that are varying lengths in terms of the arms, but they're never consistently long enough to show below the sleeve. You can pull them down from time to time, or they may begin that way with cuff showing, but as you walk around during the day, as you move your arms, they will definitely ride up. So that's perfectly fine, but do realize that that will happen. And if you're posing for photographs or something like that, then just give them a little tug to show that bit of sleeve below the jacket. Lastly, I just wanted to give a couple of tips or pieces of style advice for amping up the turtleneck game even higher, to give you a little added panache or rakishness to the way you wear them. Turtleneck outfits themselves already are at a level 9, I would say, in terms of style, but if you want to bring it up to a 10, here are a couple of things you can try. The first is when you put your turtleneck on, to not bother with how carefully you fold over the collar. Right? So when you put them on, they usually come open like that, and just sort of crumple them and let them sit the way they begin. Right? And if you do that, you're sort of injecting an element of sprezzatura to your outfit, which is an Italian term for that unpolished nonchalance of dressing. It makes you look like you didn't really try too hard, that you're not being too precious or too careful about your appearance. And that sort of naturalness, which can be practiced and intentional but doesn't appear that way, is a key to Italian men's style. So I would recommend trying that. Different turtlenecks, you can even play with it until it looks good, but make it seem like you didn't bother with it at all. So last piece of advice is to expand your definition of tailoring. As I said earlier, you might encompass safari jackets. Safari jackets being something like this, with lapels of this sort, 2 chest pockets, often with buttons, with flaps, and similar sort of hip pockets. Turtleneck is by definition a casual type of garment. Safari jacket even more casual than a sport coat. The two really pair nicely. This is a corduroy, so especially in winter fabrics, something like a corduroy. And the ribbing on a corduroy, or the cording or the wales, match nicely with ribbing that is often on turtleneck collars or even on the fronts of turtlenecks or the body of turtlenecks. So as we tend to be more casual these days, even pre-COVID, turtleneck is really an excellent garment to wear with winter tailoring as a way of dressing down those outfits while still looking sharp, smart, and polished. Hope you found those tips useful. If you did, please subscribe to the Gentlemen's Scholars Club for more information on classic menswear style. Thanks for watching.